Tyler maxed out his credit cards for World Cup tickets while Sophia watched the matches from her couch, and you map the K-shaped economy when you compare their bank statements. Politicians promised a $17 billion windfall. Tyler and Sophia pay the interest on a mounting national debt despite record stock market valuations. Tyler buys a full World Cup ticket package. Sophia pays cash for one match and saves her remaining money. Both attend the identical tournament in the same city during the same summer. By the final whistle, one makes the right financial choice for an unexpected reason, and the other goes broke for that exact cause. 48 teams play across 16 host cities. Meanwhile, host country leaders cross a historical threshold common to collapsing empires. Citizens face the real economic math after the stadiums empty on July 20th. The tournament distracted 300 million people while they ignored the financial reality. Discussions about this economic impact usually attract people selling gold coins or survival bunkers. We need a grounded perspective. Meet Tyler and Sophia, two identical financial profiles living in an American host city. They share the same age, a $60,000 salary, a modest bank balance, a car loan, and credit card debt. Both feel the pinch of unexplained inflation while watching prices rise at the grocery store. They represent average citizens, much like your neighbor or the enthusiastic coworker constantly discussing the group stage matches. Their financial futures diverge based entirely on their reaction to the tournament hype. Tyler trusts the relentless media promises. He read reports projecting a $17 billion economic boost and 185,000 new jobs. He watched his local mayor promise a generational windfall on the evening news with a completely straight face. Trusting this prosperity, Tyler swipes his credit card for a $1,200 travel package and buys a new television to replace his outdated 2015 screen. He confidently expects the promised economic boom to cover his new debt before interest rates climb. Sophia experiences the exact same relentless media blitz but reacts with calculated caution. She purchases a single cheap group stage ticket using cash. That one seat still costs as much as her monthly car payment. She watches the remaining games from a friend's couch, eating a $12 pizza instead of buying $200 stadium food. Sophia deposits her unspent tournament budget into a standard savings account. She quickly noticed a highly suspicious pattern regarding the massive financial figures broadcasted repeatedly on national television networks. Larger numbers usually lack transparent arithmetic. Before spending another single dime, Sophia investigates the exact origin and final destination of that promised $17 billion. This single inquiry ultimately sets their two distinct financial paths on completely different future trajectories. This single inquiry dictates their two distinct financial paths on separate future trajectories. The local mayor champions a projection of $17 billion and 185,000 jobs for the United States, with North American estimates reaching $40 billion. FIFA itself generated these enormous figures. You must remember FIFA collects the tournament revenue. The referee selling you on a fair game also owns the house. Sophia investigates the claims and discovers an independent economic analysis commissioned by Boston Consulting Group. Their researchers evaluated the exact same tournament parameters and projected $5 billion in short-term economic activity alongside 40,000 total jobs across all three host nations combined. The stark contrast between $17 billion for a single country and $5 billion for an entire continent represents a mathematical discrepancy. That smaller $5 billion figure remains temporary. Economists studying stadium economics all agree on the outcome. Host cities experience a few brief weeks of elevated sales tax revenue, with doubled hotel room rates and crowded downtown bars. Tourists fly home, cleanup crews remove the decorations, and the local economy snaps back to its baseline. The money vanishes. Most major revenue streams like broadcast rights, corporate sponsorships, and luxury hospitality suites flow to the event organizer instead of local vendors. FIFA anticipates collecting $11 billion from this specific event. The host city inherits traffic congestion and massive cleanup bills. Hosting requires massive financial expenditures when cities reuse existing stadiums. Security demands enormous funding. The federal government distributed over $600 million in federal security grants to American host cities. Local municipal governments absorb additional daily expenses closing downtown streets, rerouting public transit buses, and paying police officers mandatory overtime. Taxpayers fund these operations to support an event where a private Swiss organization captures the vast majority of the profits. The actual financial ledger shows the public paying for security, traffic management, and sanitation. Local merchants enjoy a few profitable weeks while losing their regular paying customers to the crowds. The organizer departs with the largest share of the wealth. Tyler sits on his plush couch watching the match on a new television, feeling like an investor in an economic boom. Sophia watches the identical television broadcast and observes an expensive fireworks display that disappears by dawn. Sophia watches the identical television broadcast and observes an expensive fireworks display that disappears by dawn. The current global tournament fails to meet ambitious economic expectations while competitive matches occur on the field. The American Hotel and Lodging Association surveyed 11 United States host cities before the first kickoff. 80% of hotels reported bookings below their forecasts. New York, the final match host, secured only 65% of projected reservations. Seattle experienced similar shortfalls and struggled to fill available rooms. The association labeled the spectacle a non-event. Exorbitant ticket costs drove this decline. Organizers implemented dynamic pricing, pushing early nosebleed seats past $800. Resale listings for the final match reached $43,000. Fans faced a financial burden equal to purchasing a reliable used vehicle. Bureaucratic travel restrictions and visa delays prevented international visitors from attending. These travelers comprise 40% of attendees, stay longer, and spend the most money. Border cities in Canada and Mexico secured higher reservation numbers than American venues. The wealthy tourists FIFA promised stayed home. Economists identify a different revenue drain as the couch potato effect. Locals reduced their personal spending during massive sporting events. During the 1998 tournament in France, foreign overnight hotel stays dropped 13% compared to the previous year. Retail sales saw zero growth. Regular vacationers avoid host cities to escape crowds, traffic, inflated prices, and rowdy fans. They book alternative destinations or cancel trips. Residents mirror this behavior. They skip their favorite restaurants, avoid downtown districts, and watch matches from their living rooms to bypass the chaos. The event repels the ordinary consumer spending that supports local businesses. Tyler ignores these economic indicators. He enjoys the festival atmosphere while his team continues competing. Sophia views the complex financial situation differently. Her initial skepticism transformed into verified statistics. The promised economic boom failed before kickoff and disappoints during the matches. She questions the severe financial aftermath once the international crowds depart. Historical receipts document the morning after a mega event brings an underrated hangover. Consider Cape Town during the 2010 World Cup. Organizers built a $600 million stadium featuring stunning Table Mountain views. That gorgeous concrete structure sits abandoned today. The city lacks a permanent local team large enough to fill the seats. The arena bleeds $6 million to $10 million annually to keep stadium lights on and pitch grass alive. Local residents proposed a wrecking ball as a cost-effective solution to stop the financial bleeding. Manaus presents a similar story. City officials dropped over $300 million on a 44,000-seat arena in the Amazon rainforest for the 2014 tournament. The facility lacks a top-flight club and requires a grueling 6-hour flight from Rio de Janeiro. Examining the picture exposes a consistent pattern of wasted public funds. South Africa spent over $1 billion across 10 stadiums. Brazil spent $4 billion. Russia spent $11 billion on 12 venues that now sit half empty and drain maintenance funds. One specific South African municipal government cut basic public services to pay the debt on a single World Cup arena. The United States avoids this specific infrastructure trap for the upcoming 2026 tournament. Organizers are reusing existing NFL and MLS venues rather than building fresh white elephants. The United States dodged the crushing construction debts that sank past hosts. Dodging concrete debt leaves the deeper behavioral pattern intact. Consumer demand spikes during the event and then reverts. A temporary sugar high fails to alter the underlying economic trajectory. The stadiums will not bankrupt the United States. The actual concern involves the underlying direction of the American economy before the fireworks started. That original trajectory remains intact long after the final whistle blows. Critics point to 1994 to dismiss these concerns. America hosted the tournament that year, drawing 3.6 million fans for the highest attendance in World Cup history. The economy then entered a massive expansion. The late 90s brought a technology boom, skyrocketing markets, and falling unemployment. The United States saw prosperity after hosting the event. This historical fact holds true. The tournament did not drive that specific economic surge. A massive technological shift involving the internet sparked that specific decade of growth. America also maintained solid fiscal health at the exact time the internet arrived. The 1994 tournament left a lasting and distinct cultural footprint. The cultural event birthed Major League Soccer in 1996 and inspired an entire generation of children to kick a soccer ball around local neighborhoods. The tournament contributed zero measurable gross domestic product growth. The event registers as a tiny rounding error against a $30 trillion national economy. The tournament itself causes no economic damage. The critical factor involves the underlying economic timing. Strong foundational metrics supported the country when the 1994 spectacle arrived. The ensuing national prosperity reflected real economic strength across multiple sectors. The 2026 tournament arrives while foundational metrics continue to decay. This stark timing shift alters the fundamental meaning of the national celebration. The 1994 fireworks honored a nation experiencing real upward mobility. The 2026 spectacle serves as the loudest, most beautiful distraction a country throws for itself while sliding downward. I share four numbers exposing the decline. Tyler ignores them. Sophia stares at all four. Sophia fixes her eyes on the first number, the national debt. The United States government owes more than $39 trillion as of this summer and races toward $40 trillion. The country added its most recent $1 trillion of debt in under 5 months. America has never borrowed at this speed during peacetime outside of a world war or a full financial crisis. The federal government runs a $1.9 trillion deficit this year alone, spending that much more than it collects in tax revenue, stacking the gap on top of everything it already owes. Trillions blur together and lose meaning. The one number that deserves your attention is the interest on that debt. This year, for the first time in American history, the federal government will spend more than $1 trillion on interest payments alone. No principal reduction, just rent on money already borrowed. That breaks down to roughly $3 billion every single day, including the afternoon Tyler sits in a stadium watching a World Cup match. That interest bill now exceeds the entire American defense budget. The government spends more servicing old debt than it spends on the military, more than Medicare, more than Medicaid. Interest has become one of the largest line items in the federal budget and the single fastest growing one, projected to double to over $2 trillion annually within roughly a decade. Historian Niall Ferguson has a blunt rule for this situation. Any great power that spends more on interest payments than on its own defense is a great power in decline. The debt consumes the future, pulling money away from the investments that strengthen a country and funneling those dollars into obligations from past borrowing. By Ferguson's measure, the United States crossed that threshold in 2024 and remains on the wrong side of it this summer, while a global audience of billions watches the World Cup unfold in American stadiums. Debt at this scale feeds on itself. Economists call the endpoint a debt spiral. More debt produces more interest. More interest forces more borrowing to cover payments. More borrowing adds more debt. The cycle accelerates with each lap. Nonpartisan budget watchdogs warn that sometime in the 2030s, interest costs on America's debt could outpace economic growth itself, the mathematical trigger for that spiral. Early signs have appeared. Several U.S. Treasury auctions earlier this year came in weak, with traditional buyers absorbing far more than their usual share. One weak auction means little. A string of them in the wrong year signals that the most reliable borrower in history is drawing skeptical looks from lenders for the first time in decades. Tyler put $1,200 on a credit card betting prosperity would reach him eventually. He mirrors his government's behavior at a personal scale, spending money he does not have against a windfall that has not arrived. Sophia saw that $1 trillion interest bill and started building a financial cushion. She watched the largest borrower on earth get slowly squeezed by its own interest payments and refused to assume she would escape the squeeze. She watched mounting interest payments squeeze the largest borrower on earth and refused to assume she would escape the squeeze. The second economic indicator involves the disappearance of growth. Late last winter, a conflict involving Iran pushed crude oil past $100 a barrel. You felt this shock at the gas pump. Prices jumped from $3.14 to $4.50 per gallon. You see these numbers glowing on massive signs during your commute, making fuel costs an unavoidable reminder of economic pain, unlike stock portfolios you can ignore. This oil shock hit a fragile system. Gross domestic product expanded 0.7% in the final quarter of last year. Following the energy spike, major banks lowered their expectations. Goldman Sachs projected second half growth between 1.25 and 1.75%. Economists call this condition stall speed, meaning the system travels at a pace where a minor disruption causes a complete failure. Some analysts use a term absent from American discourse for 4 decades: stagflation. This scenario combines slowing expansion with rising prices, giving you a weaker job market alongside heavier grocery bills. Forecasters soften this reality by calling it stagflation light, which minimizes a severe structural problem. The current employment sector showed weakness. The economy lost 92,000 jobs in a single month, pushing the national unemployment rate toward 4.5%. You, the consumer, began showing exhaustion. Your real income dropped, prompting you to cancel vacations, cook at home instead of dining out, and prioritize basic needs over discretionary wants. Despite these warning signs, most analysts predict an overall slowdown rather than a total collapse. They assign a 30 to 35% probability to an outright recession, expecting the country to muddle through. Think of the economy as an airplane flying at stall speed, carrying maximum weight into a severe storm. The plane might avoid a crash, but maxing out your available credit cards represents a terrible financial decision. Tyler continues betting the turbulence will clear. Sophia keeps her seatbelt fastened and prepares for a rough landing. The third economic indicator hides inside your wallet and catches up with Tyler. Economists call this reality a K-shaped economy. Picture the letter K, one line points upward while the other points downward from the same starting position. Wealthy individuals thrive while lower-income workers fall apart. The mathematical average of these extremes looks normal. This averaging effect explains why headline reports appear healthy while regular individuals feel overwhelmed. Households carry $18 trillion in debt. Credit card balances sit near $1.25 trillion. Lenders charge interest rates between 15 and 21%. A balance accumulating 21% interest doubles in price over 4 years. Tyler bought a new television to watch matches. Making minimum payments means he will eventually pay for 2 televisions while watching one. The personal savings rate collapsed to 4%. Americans added tens of billions of dollars to their credit cards during the final months. They used this borrowed money to cover the gap between stagnant wages and living costs. Borrowing to survive resembles treading water while wearing heavy weights. A second hidden tax affects every single shopper. The effective tariff rate on imported goods climbed to 11% over the past year. Importers pass these costs to consumers. The average household pays between $1,000 and $1,700 extra dollars annually. This functions as a regressive tax. The burden falls heaviest on lower-income individuals who spend their entire paycheck to survive. Basic necessities like cleaning supplies and groceries cost more. These price increases drain money from people least equipped to absorb the shock. Financial distress spreads unevenly across the population. Serious debt delinquency among young adults climbed to 5%. This rate doubled from the previous year and represents the worst performance of any demographic. Subprime lenders report delinquency rates running twice as high as major banks. The Federal Reserve Chair confirmed this divide. Lower-income individuals struggle to afford basics while wealthy consumers continue spending. Consumer sentiment surveys reflect widespread anxiety. Americans report feeling pessimistic about their personal finances at levels seen during deep recessions. 70% of citizens expected the current year to bring severe financial difficulties. This dread contrasts with the official narrative of a $17 billion sports windfall. Politicians celebrate an economic party while regular citizens brace for a harsh financial impact. The mood on the ground predicts the future better than projections. Consider the $43,000 price tag for a premium ticket. This extreme cost illustrates the divided economy. One segment spends $40,000 on sports, while another poor segment puts basic groceries on a credit card, charging 21% interest. The tournament placed both demographics inside the same stadium and pointed cameras at luxury boxes. Tyler sits far away from those seats. He occupies the downward slope of the divide. He ignores the downward pull because his credit card absorbs the impact. The credit limit acts like a crumple zone, absorbing the collision before the passenger feels physical trauma. Sophia maintained a high savings rate by asking a question. She evaluated her position on the economic divide and considered losing her job. She preferred holding a boring cushion over enjoying a spectacular summer. Picture both individuals on the same evening after the final tournament match. Tyler receives his monthly credit card statement. He reviews the massive balance from the ticket package. He looks at the total amount and the minimum payment. The minimum payment looks small and manageable. He taps the button to pay the minimum and promises to pay the rest later. This transaction takes 9 seconds. He feels responsible. Those 9 seconds represent the most expensive decision of his year. The small minimum payment allows the high interest rate to compound. The system engineers this option to feel painless until the debt spirals. Sophia opens her banking app that same evening. She checks the savings account holding the money she refused to spend. The balance increased by a few dollars in accumulated interest. She feels nothing looking at this tiny gain. This flat line represents the ultimate goal. Tyler's money works against him while he sleeps. Sophia's money works for her while she sleeps. Neither person notices this subtle divergence the next day. The economic indicators function behind the closed doors. They grind away on autopilot during unremarkable evenings. Eventually, the financial gap between two people who started in the exact same seat becomes too massive to ignore. You see this visible deep divergence playing out when you examine modern American stock market valuations. Intelligent retail investors assume historical pricing rules no longer apply. Veteran investors know those old rules return. Nobel laureate Robert Shiller developed the cycle-adjusted CAPE ratio to measure stock prices against 10 full years of smoothed company earnings. Shiller designed this 10-year mathematical smoothing to prevent a single great or terrible year from distorting the broader economic picture. The historical long-run average sits at 17. The valuation ratio hit 40 this past summer. Market historians reviewing 155 years of data reveal this extreme valuation occurring one previous time. That instance happened in 1999 at the absolute peak of the infamous dot-com bubble. Stock prices collapsed by half, trapping everyday investors in a lost decade where they held stocks for 10 years and gained nothing. Warren Buffett tracks a second important macroeconomic gauge comparing the total stock market value to the overall economy size. Buffett warns individual investors about pushing past a 200% threshold. The latest official measurement rests around 220%. Market optimists point to a massive structural distinction between today and 1999. A tiny group of gigantic American technology companies, grouped as the Magnificent Seven, drives the entire market and comprises 37% of the index. These specific companies generate massive profits, sell real products, and hold literal mountains of cash. They differ from the cash-burning internet startups of the late 90s. Concentrating the entire market weight onto 7 specific businesses creates 7 distinct failure points for regular investors. Shiller ran his specific model this past summer and forecasted stocks yielding a 1.5% annual return before inflation over the coming decade. Shiller predicts a slow financial grind with this grim projection where your portfolio stalls while living expenses climb. Tyler ignores these warning signs. He invests his entire portfolio in those 7 glamorous technology stocks because their prices keep rising. Tyler uses price momentum as his only real research. Sophia keeps capital in the market. She refuses to hide in a financial bunker. She reads the fine print and spreads her capital across cheaper global markets and boring dividend-paying assets. She prices her portfolio for reality rather than perfection, keeping her money out of the single overcrowded basket the rest of the crowd fights over. Sophia prices her portfolio for reality rather than perfection. You place all 4 major economic indicators side by side and see the complete national financial picture. During the exact 8 weeks the United States hosts the most expensive sporting event in human history, the national debt crosses $40 trillion. Interest payments on that massive debt now exceed the entire military defense budget. Economic growth stalls under a severe oil shock. Working families carry 21% credit card balances to buy basic daily groceries, while wealthy attendees drop $40,000 on premium stadium suites. The stock market celebrates at extreme valuations, matching the exact historical peak right before the stock market lost half its total value. The World Cup causes none of these financial realities. Politicians use the tournament to mask these harsh realities. This dynamic mirrors the oldest strategy empires used to manage declining power. Ancient Roman leaders coined the phrase bread and circuses. As the Republic accumulated massive debts and structural cracks appeared, politicians kept citizens calm by handing out free grain and staging spectacular gladiator games. They filled the massive stone coliseum to force people to watch the bloody spectacle instead of examining the empty financial ledger. Historians note that collapsing global powers throw their grandest parties right before their final economic collapse. The celebrations peak when the underlying mathematics fail. No government official sat in a war room and scheduled this specific tournament to distract citizens. The situation operates without a central conspiracy. Observers find the reality sadder than a coordinated plot. A nation experiences genuine excitement and severe financial distress at the exact same time. The excitement provides a convenient excuse for voters to ignore the distress. Fans in the stands see right through the falling confetti. The loud crowds drown out the quiet math. The financial ledger sits unaffected by the stadium celebrations while citizens finish watching the final games on July 20th. Tyler and Sophia move past the four economic numbers this summer to face their own finances. Tyler and Sophia move past the four economic numbers this summer to face their own finances. We must examine the optimistic perspective to avoid the trap of perpetual doom. Financial commentators predict recessions that never materialize, forecasting 11 of the last two severe economic downturns. Investors who liquidated their portfolios based on high valuation metrics missed massive wealth accumulation while feeling superior as their net worth stagnated. Fear fails as a viable, prolonged investment strategy. Markets tolerate extreme valuations for 10 years or more. Analysts predicting market peaks act too early, making their accurate mathematical forecasts completely identical to incorrect ones. The United States possesses unique structural resilience. The country issues the global reserve currency. Global capital flees to American assets during severe international crises. This dynamic provides an economic advantage that standard financial models fail to quantify. The national debt reaches historic levels, yet the American capacity to service this obligation remains unmatched. Investors wagering against the United States economy lose their capital, filling a massive graveyard of failed short sellers. Optimists also hold strong arguments regarding seven giant technology corporations. Artificial intelligence might fulfill the ambitious projections of its advocates. Such technological advancement would render current corporate stock prices cheap in retrospect. Early skeptics of Amazon experienced this precise realization after the company proved its massive growth potential. Expensive stocks harm investors when the anticipated corporate revenue expansion fails to occur. Corporate earnings meet the highest market expectations. Professional forecasters predict a mundane economic environment rather than a total financial collapse. The economy will experience sluggish expansion and mediocre performance instead of catastrophic systemic failure. Historical precedents from 1994 demonstrate the American ability to overcome severe economic challenges and emerge with prosperity. Tyler makes a rational choice by maintaining an optimistic financial outlook. History rewards positive economic expectations with substantial investment returns. Cynics regret their pessimistic stock market positions. A repetition of the last 4 decades of economic performance guarantees Tyler significant wealth accumulation, while Sophia sacrifices potential investment gains through excessive caution. The primary inquiry shifts from the general validity of optimism to the specific probability of an unprecedented economic shift. Identifying concrete broad economic indicators helps investors distinguish between standard daily stock market fluctuations and fundamental structural transformations. You use these structural shifts to evaluate Tyler and his optimism. Developers using artificial intelligence might generate a productivity boom large enough to outgrow national debt, mirroring the 1990s internet expansion. Traders drop oil prices, lowering inflation while employers keep hiring workers. Politicians might enforce deficit discipline before lawmakers stop interest bills from consuming the entire budget. Under these exact circumstances, investors validate Tyler through stock market gains. Sophia looks foolish for hoarding cash over future debt worries. Economists track repeating economic cycles. These repeating cycles validate Sophia's caution winning when three specific financial triggers occur. Massive interest payments consume the federal budget and strip politicians of the power to fund stimulus packages during the next recession. Extreme wealth inequality splits the national cake until poor citizens lack the funds to purchase basic goods, stalling the consumer economy. Stock market investors reject absurd 40 times earnings multiples following 10 years of 1.5% returns. In these scenarios, World Cup festivities distract citizens from an impending financial reckoning. The soccer tournament produces zero economic outcomes for the country no matter who lifts the trophy on July 19th. Pundits claiming the event will crash or save the nation peddle identical fairy tales to manipulate public attention. They want citizens watching the game instead of auditing the national ledger. The sporting event served as a convenient calendar marker for these underlying structural fractures to surface and demand payment. Fast forward a few years to evaluate the results. Tyler takes the definitive early lead. He enjoys a summer with premium seats, lasting memories, and a beautiful television he watches every night. His portfolio climbs because crowd favorites rise until the exact moment they crash. Sophia appears overcautious, holding low-yield savings that earn a polite yawn while Tyler celebrates. You would crown Tyler the victor if you stopped checking at the one-year mark. The four macroeconomic numbers compound in silence beneath the surface. Tyler finances a $1,200 ticket package on a credit card, charging 21% interest. That debt balloons to $2,000. He pays double for the television. Forecasters label the ensuing economic slowdown a stall speed. His employer trims Tyler's weekly hours. He lacks a financial cushion because 2 years of prosperity convinced him he would never need one. He chose blind optimism when optimism stopped generating returns. He watched the stadium fireworks and ignored his personal ledger. His ledger finally caught him. Sophia relies on her boring savings cushion. Management trims her hours during the identical stall speed slowdown. She possesses 6 months of breathing room instead of immediate panic. The stock market moves sideways for a long, flat, grueling stretch. She avoided buying the 7 popular stocks everyone else had to dump at once. She enjoys peaceful sleep. Accumulating wealth was never her primary objective. She planned to remain standing on an ordinary Tuesday years later when the final bill arrived. She succeeds by avoiding catastrophic loss. Tyler watched the World Cup and counted goals. Sophia watched the host economy and counted zeros. Both sat in the same city during the same glorious summer cheering the exact same matches. Tyler walked out of the stadium into a decade he assumed would fund itself. Sophia walked out into a decade she budgeted for. You cannot predict the national future with certainty. Anyone claiming foresight reads a horoscope with a spreadsheet attached. Politicians use spectacles to distract populations from economic fundamentals. Ancient Rome used this trick on its citizens. Fading empires use it today. Credit card companies use this trick on you monthly. They make the show dazzling and loud so you forget to calculate the actual costs. If a promoter points at a spectacular event and promises a financial windfall, ignore the hype. Ask the promoter one specific question. Did they count the zeros or count the fireworks? Rigorous accountants determine the final financial outcome. The stadium lights turn on July 20th. Tourists fly home after 8 weeks of hosting the greatest sporting show on earth. Observers see the actual national debt load in the empty stadium stands. The host nation remains what the planners dictated before the tournament started. Sophia ignored the loud fireworks. She counted the zeros. She walked into a decade she budgeted for, securing her personal financial future while her peers chased temporary spectacles.